Out in the California desert, past the last town on the highway, there's a sprinkler system so large you can pick it out from orbit. It covers roughly 50 square miles of cracked white ground. Computer controlled valves, buried pipe, pump stations, thousands of sprinkler heads wired together into one of the biggest systems of its kind anywhere on Earth, sitting in the middle of nowhere. It waters nothing. There are no crops out there, no lawns, no golf course, no town. The entire machine exists to keep a dead lake damp. Los Angeles built it, and Los Angeles pays for it. Over the life of the project, the bill has passed $2.5 billion. Every year, the system drinks about 60,000 acre-feet of water, which is enough to supply 250,000 homes. And none of it was ever meant to bring anything back to life. It was a punishment, a court-enforced compliance cost. The city had killed this lake, the corpse had started poisoning people downwind, and the sprinklers were there to hold the poison down. Nobody involved was thinking about restoration. Go read the paperwork, you will not find the word. This was air quality enforcement, run by an electric utility, on a lakebed that nobody expected to ever be beautiful again. Then the water went out onto the playa, and the birds came. Not a few, and not eventually. They started showing up almost immediately, and they kept coming until more than 100,000 shorebirds a year were dropping onto a lake that Los Angeles had drained a century earlier and had no intention of refilling. In 2018, the place was voted into an international network of the most important shorebird sites in the hemisphere. The vote was unanimous. They set out to build a dust suppression machine. They accidentally built one of the most important bird habitats in California. To understand how a few inches of water resurrected something the size of a city, you have to start with how thoroughly it was killed. On November 5th, 1913, tens of thousands of people climbed into the hills north of Los Angeles to watch water arrive. They had come for the opening of the Los Angeles aqueduct. It was a concrete river running about 240 miles down from the eastern Sierra, and it was genuinely one of the engineering marvels of its age. When the gates turned, the water came through as a trickle, then a torrent, foaming down an artificial cascade while cannons fired and a brass band played. The chief engineer, William Mulholland, leaned over to the mayor and said the line that every school kid in California still learns. There it is. Take it. They took it. Los Angeles went from a frontier town of about 200,000 people to a metropolis of more than 1 million in under 20 years, and it did that on water it had reached out and pulled from a valley 240 miles away. By 1928, the city owned 90% of the water in the Owens Valley. At the bottom of that valley, there was a lake. Owens Lake covered about 100 square miles and ran roughly 30 feet deep. It was what geologists call a terminal lake, which means water flowed in and never flowed out. The Owens River came down out of the Sierra, stopped there, and the only exit was evaporation. The basin is something like 1 million years old. 12,000 years ago, the water in it was 200 feet deep. It was also, for thousands of years, one of the most important stopover sites in the western United States for migrating waterfowl and shorebirds. In September of 1917, a zoologist named Joseph Grinnell stood on the shore and recorded that the shore was crowded with waterfowl, avocets, phalaropes, and ducks, with flocks wheeling over the water as far as he could see. He was describing the end of it. He just didn't know that yet. With the river gone, the lake had no way to refill. It shrank. It got saltier as it went. By the mid-1920s, Owens Lake was essentially finished, 100 square miles of open water reduced to a dry white plain with a shallow brine pool sitting in the middle of it. The valley fought. In May of 1924, about 40 men packed dynamite against the aqueduct near Lone Pine and blew a section of it open. The damage was minor, and the act was mostly symbolic. That November, 70 or more of them seized the Alabama Gates spillway and turned the city's water supply out into the dry riverbed, and they held it for 4 days. Los Angeles sent armed guards. The papers called it sabotage. None of it worked. The water kept going south. And then the lake started to kill people. This is the part nobody planned for, and it comes down to chemistry. The bed of a terminal lake is not ordinary dirt. For thousands of years, every mineral the river carried in had stayed there and concentrated because nothing ever drained out. So, what was left behind when the water finally evaporated was a chemical crust: sodium carbonate, sodium sulfate, and traces of things you very much do not want in your lungs, including cadmium, nickel, and arsenic. Some dry lake beds are harmless. Bonneville has a hard, stable crust that mostly stays put. Owens does not. The particular salts in this lake bed form fragile, crumbly, easily eroded crusts. And the wind in the Owens Valley is relentless, funneled hard between the Sierra Nevada on one side and the Inyo Mountains on the other. When it blew, it lifted that crust and carried it. The dust storms could cut visibility down to a few yards. They rolled across Keeler and Lone Pine and Alancha, towns that had once sat on a lake shore and now sat downwind of a poisoned field. People breathed it for decades. Some of those communities emptied out into ghost towns. In the year 2000, Owens Lake was throwing an estimated 62,000 tons of PM10 into the air every year. Not the region's worst dust source, the country's. The exposed lake bed was producing the highest concentrations of airborne particulate measured anywhere in the United States. Los Angeles had moved a river and grown a city, and the bill came due 100 miles away in other people's lungs. For 50 years, almost nothing happened. The obvious fix is so obvious it barely needs saying out loud. Give the water back. Let the river run to the lake, refill it, and there is no dust because there is no exposed lake bed. Done. It was never going to happen. It still isn't. Los Angeles does not exist without that aqueduct. The city grew to its size on Owens Valley water, and even today, roughly a third of its supply still comes down from the eastern Sierra. You cannot unbuild Los Angeles. There was no political path, no legal path, and no practical path to putting 100 square miles of water back into that basin. Nobody with the power to sign that was ever going to sign it. So the constraint was locked in before the work even started. Whatever the fix turned out to be, it had to stop the dust without returning the lake. It had to work on a corpse. That trap is the reason the problem just sat there, decade after decade, while people downwind kept breathing it. What finally broke the deadlock was not conscience, it was the law. The local air district went after the city, federal air quality standards gave the case teeth, and after years of resistance, it ended in a 1998 agreement that left Los Angeles no way out. The city was required to bring the lake bed into compliance, not to restore it, not to apologize for it, just to stop the dust. Los Angeles was ordered to fix something it had no intention of loving. Here is the realization that made the impossible thing possible, and it is almost insultingly simple. The dust does not care how deep the water is. Think about what actually happens in a dust storm. Wind hits a surface. If the top layer of that surface is dry and loose, it lifts into the air. If the top layer is wet, it stays put. That is the entire mechanism. Dust is a surface problem. A lake is a volume solution. They were never the same question. You do not need 30 feet of water to hold that crust down. You need the skin of it to be damp. So instead of a lake, they built a film. The technique is called shallow flooding, and the system Los Angeles built to do it is one of the largest of its kind in the world. A vast network of computer-controlled valves, pipes, outfalls, and sprinklers laid across an ancient lake bed. And the requirement written into the rules is not a depth at all. It's a percentage. During the dust season, roughly mid-October through early July, something like 72 to 75% of the graded surface has to be kept wet or saturated. That's it. Keep the surface damp, and the poison stays where it is. As a bonus, the wet ground also traps blowing sand that drifts in from elsewhere. It's the difference between filling a swimming pool and hosing down a dirt road. Same dust, same wind, one of those you can actually afford. Shallow flooding is not the only tool out there. Where water was too precious or the ground was wrong, they used other things. Gravel spread over the surface to physically cap it. Managed vegetation, with roots to hold the soil together. Tillage, which roughens the ground so the wind can't get a grip. Brine. Today, the city operates and maintains about 48.6 square miles of federally approved control measures across that playa, and shallow flooding accounts for roughly 60% of it. None of this is elegant. It is a pollution control device the size of a small city designed and run by an electric utility, and it eats about 60,000 acre-feet of water a year and has cost ratepayers more than $2.5 billion. On paper, it was a machine for making dust sit still. That is all it was ever supposed to be. Then the water went out onto the playa, and something showed up that was not in the plan. The flies came first. A thin sheen of water on that mineral crust does something strange. Algae and bacteria bloom in it almost at once, and they tint the water bright green and red and orange. Brine flies arrived for that. Then the things that eat brine flies started arriving. And then the birds came. And they came immediately. This is the part that stops me every time. The birds were never gone. Not really. Owens Lake sits directly on the Pacific Flyway, one of the great migration corridors of the Western Hemisphere. And for thousands of years, it had been one of the most important refueling stops in the western United States. The lake dried up in the 1920s. The Flyway didn't move. For most of a century, birds had been flying over Owens Lake, every spring, every fall, looking down at a white poison flat where their ancestors had rested and fed, and flying on if they had the reserves to make it. They still had the map. There was just nowhere to land. The moment there was water, they landed. Survey data now show more than 100,000 shorebirds visiting Owens Lake every year, and during spring and fall migration, the lake supports hundreds of thousands. Western sandpipers make a 6,000-mile migration between Panama Bay and Alaska, and Owens Lake is now a reliable place to refuel on that run. The shallow flooding has created something like 34,000 acres of habitat for the western snowy plover, which now breeds out there. It is the largest wildlife site in its county, and in 2018 it was admitted to the Western Hemisphere Shorebird Reserve Network as the 104th site by unanimous vote, which put a municipal dust control project on a list alongside the most important shorebird habitats between Alaska and the southern tip of South America. And the dust, the thing they were actually trying to fix, collapsed. Emissions went from an estimated 62,000 tons a year in 2000 to about 355 tons a year in 2023. That's a 99.4% reduction. As of 2025, Owens Lake isn't even the leading source of fine particle pollution in its own region anymore. The surrounding desert is. Now, I want to be careful here because this is where the story stops being clean. What exists at Owens Lake today is not a lake, it's an appliance. Hundreds of thousands of birds are living on the output of a compliance program, and that program is under genuine pressure to use less water. In some years, Los Angeles has spent more water holding down dust at Owens Lake than it imported for its own customers, and the current direction is explicit. New dust control measures should be waterless wherever that's feasible. Every gallon saved out on the playa is a gallon back in the aqueduct, which means this habitat is contingent. It exists because suppressing the dust happened to require the one thing the birds needed. Researchers have said it plainly that efforts to cut water use in dust mitigation will likely eat into the habitat that's there now. If the engineering ever cracks how to hold that crust down dry, the deal changes. The birds are living in a loophole. Step back and look at the whole shape of it. Los Angeles took a river. 100 square miles of lake died. The dead lake started poisoning the people who stayed. The city fought that fact for decades, and when it finally moved, it didn't move out of remorse. It moved because a court and a federal standard left it no choice. What it built was not a restoration project. It was a lid. They put a few inches of water on the poison. That's the whole intervention. Nobody planted a forest. Nobody released a single animal. Nobody trucked in a single fish or seeded a single acre with the goal of bringing anything back. And 100,000 birds a year came home. That happened because the system was never as broken as it looked from the ground. The flyway was intact. The instinct was intact. The route was intact. Birds had been passing over that white flat for 100 years with the map still in their heads, and the only missing piece was somewhere to put their feet down. The lake never needed to be rebuilt. It needed 1 inch of water and 1 season of not being poison. We tend to assume that repairing something this big has to be as deliberate as breaking it was. Owens Lake says otherwise. This recovery was an accident, a side effect. It happened while the engineers were busy solving a completely different problem, and it happened anyway. Sometimes the world isn't waiting for us to save it, it's waiting for us to stop for one season doing the thing that was killing it. The most advanced technology on Owens Lake isn't the sprinkler grid or the computer controlled valves or the $2.5 billion of pipe buried under that playa. It's the memory of a bird that kept flying over a dead lake for 100 years, waiting for somewhere to land.